across to Brussels and speak to our correspondent, Dave Keating. Hello to you, Dave. Ursula von der Leyen still on her way to the capital, Kyiv, but what is she expected to discuss with Volodymyr Zelensky once she arrives?
Well, if we can go by what the Ukrainian foreign minister said yesterday at the NATO summit here in Brussels, they'll be talking about weapons, weapons, and weapons. That's what he said were the three things that Ukraine needs the most right now. Now, as you mentioned, President von der Leyen is on her way right now by train to Kyiv. She's joined by the EU's chief diplomat, Josep Borrell. She's also going to be joined in these talks by the prime ministers of Slovakia and Austria. So this is a very high-level meeting. And as opposed to the visit made last month by the prime ministers of Slovenia, Czech Republic, and Poland, this meeting von der Leyen will absolutely be speaking for the EU. So she'll be more limited in what she can say because she has to kind of represent the consensus view of all of the EU countries. But I think the two things they'll be talking about is they want more arms. Now, yesterday, the EU agreed to augment their fund for arming Ukraine by an additional 500 million euros. That brings the total of the fund to 1.5 billion euros. So President Zelensky should be pleased to see that, but he wants to see that actually spent. That's just money that's available. Essentially, countries can have their military expenditure for arming Ukraine reimbursed by that EU fund, but he wants to make sure it's actually used, and that has been slow going so far. I also expect that President Zelensky will be asking again for assurances from President von der Leyen that one day Ukraine will be in the EU. He's kind of dropped this request for so-called fast-track accession, accepting that that does not exist. But he just wants a statement from the Council saying that someday Ukraine will be in the EU. That's still a tough ask, though, because there are plenty of people who don't think Ukraine's future is to be part of the EU proper, that it's maybe better suited for some kind of outer ring. Now, interestingly, with Slovakia's prime minister visit in Ukraine today, that will mean that 3 out of the Visegrad 4 countries, Czechia, Slovakia, Poland, will have all had their prime ministers visit Ukraine. That leaves Hungary as the odd man out. But don't expect Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to be visiting President Zelensky in Kyiv anytime soon. His attacks on President Zelensky have grown more emboldened since his re-election on Sunday. He is refusing to aid Ukraine in this conflict, saying that Hungary must remain neutral, and he's threatening to veto any attempt by the EU to ban imports of Russian oil or gas.
Yeah, and Dave, in the meantime, the EU is ready to take more punitive economic measures against Russia. Tell us about this latest sanction package. What's in it?
So the headline news from this 5th package of sanctions, now official as of this morning, is that the EU will be banning Russian coal. That ban will take effect in August. It's not a huge amount. The EU doesn't import much coal from Russia. It affects about 4 billion euros per year. Compare that to the 1 billion euros per day EU countries send to Russia to pay for oil and gas. Now, also in this package are new sanctions on individuals, including Putin's 2 daughters. Also a block on Russian or Belarusian ships entering EU ports or trucks crossing into EU borders. There's also new restrictions on imports and exports and a blanket ban on any Russian company participating in any EU public procurement. Of course, what's missing is oil or gas, and that's the next big discussion. President von der Leyen has been saying over the past days that oil is on the table. They are discussing it. I'm hearing that the German and Austrian opposition to banning Russian oil is softening, but they need some kind of phased-in approach so that it doesn't create an economic shock in Europe that could send Europe plunging into recession. That's going to be discussed over the next week. But Hungary remains the biggest obstacle to that right now because Viktor Orban has been very insistent that he will veto any attempt by the EU to ban Russian oil or gas. Gas, by the way, completely off the table for the moment. The EU is much more dependent on Russian gas than Russian oil, and it's also much harder to replace that gas than it is oil because oil can be sent as a liquid over ships, over the ocean. Gas, it's much harder to send over the ocean because it has to be liquefied. So gas off the table, oil is a possibility. Viktor Orban may utilize that veto next week. That would put him on a real collision course with his Visegrad 4 partners, and with Poland in particular. That's the other big thing to watch right now, is that so-called illiberal axis within the EU, Poland and Hungary. That alliance is really frayed right now because they're disagreeing intensely on Russia. And if Orban does actually veto that attempt to ban oil, Russian oil, if Germany and Austria have come through that, I think it could really shatter that illiberal alliance between Poland and Hungary.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Dave Keating reporting from Brussels.